Breaking tonight, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has revoked a plea deal made with the alleged 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, commonly known as KSM, and two other co-conspirators. That agreement would have taken the death penalty off the table for KSM and sentenced him to prison in exchange for pleading guilty to all charges against him. But in a quiet Friday night release, Secretary Austin declaring this in a memo directly to the senior defense official in charge of that agreement. Quote, responsibility for such a decision should rest with me. Joining me now, former Associate Counsel to President George W. Bush on national security, Jamil Jaffer. First of all, why was this plea deal made in the first instance? This is all pre-trial. There has been no trial. The death penalty off the table. What would have gone into making that decision in the first instance?
Well, you know, this conversation about whether you might do a plea deal with the 9/11 defendants has been going on for a while. For a number of years, a number of the prosecutors involved in the case have said it's going to be hard to get the death penalty. It's going to be hard to convict them at all. We've been tied up in pretrial hearings for years, months and months and months. And there's this issue of evidence coming in, right? We know that enhanced interrogation techniques were used with some of the detainees, including KSM, who was subject to the water board. There's a question about how much that evidence can come in at trial, given the military commission procedures and rules.
Because of its coercion would be thought of, obviously.
That's the theory, yeah, exactly.
Well, the idea that there would be a plea deal offered, secured, and then Austin would be able to revoke it, why would he have the authority, unlike a judge, a prosecutor, in the normal course of business?
Well, these are military commissions, and so under the Military Commissions Act, the person who convenes the commissions is the Secretary of Defense. Now, he typically delegates that authority to, in this case, a one-star brigadier general, retired, Susan Escalator, right? She had the authority to bring the charges, convene the commissions, and make plea agreements. She made a plea agreement 2 days ago. The Defense Department announced it. And then 2 days later, Secretary of Defense says, I'm taking away your authority to make plea agreements, and I'm withdrawing from these 3 deals.
How is it possible that he would have 2 days afterwards revoked it as opposed to beforehand said no?
That is, I think, the million-dollar question. Right? Did he not know that this was going on? I mean, they put out a press release, right? He's the Secretary of Defense. Did they find out about it after the fact? It's not clear. It appears, you know, that the prosecutors were telling the judge in the military commissions, hey, we're looking to make a deal. This is going on. This conversation has been happening for a while. Back in 2022, there was a potential deal on the table. Decision was made not to do that, right? So it's really unclear why this is happening now.
In a normal prosecution, you would have to alert the victims or the family of the victims about a plea deal you're making. It wouldn't necessarily change the course of that plea, but to at least inform them. And they definitely have opinions on this. We understand that the families, in some respect, and survivors as well, and families of those who were killed in those attacks, some called it a gut punch of sorts. Could that contribute to the pressure to not have this plea deal on the table?
Well, certainly there's been a lot of pressure to force these guys to go to trial, allow all the testimony to come out at trial, allow the witnesses to speak at trial. Now, this plea deal, the theory was that there would be a long sentencing hearing where there'd be victim statements. They'd have to sort of hear all the victims testify. That being said, there are those victims and families who say, we want a trial. We want the death penalty on the table. There are other victims' families, to be fair, that have said, we want this thing over. We want it done with. We want whatever the deal is. Let's get it done, and let's just move on with our life, being able to say what we want to say about our family members.
It's been 23 years. Why hasn't there been a trial to this point?
Well, you know, we've had a number of cases go all the way up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court's forced Congress to go back and redo the military commission's legislation a couple of times. And then ultimately, there's been these issues in these pretrial hearings. We've had prosecutors leave. We're on multiple convening authorities leave. So there's been a lot of turnover, a lot of back and forth. And at the end of the day, when these charges were finally brought, we're just tied up in pre-trial proceedings. Can you bring in this testimony, right? Can we listen in when their lawyers are talking to the defendants, right? Because, of course, you don't want these defendants getting information out of Gitmo, right? At the same time, do they have a right to talk to their lawyers in private? So all these issues, every single issue that can be litigated is being litigated, and so it's slowing everything down to a crawl. Prosecutors saying, let's get a deal, let's get it off the table. Some 9/11 families, a lot of elected officials are saying, we want to see a trial.
Well, Lloyd Austin does not want this plea, and that's where it stands today. How much it will set back the proceedings, we'll have to wait and see. Jamil Jaffer, thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura.